Here we go.
Here we go.
Lovely. We've got 19 so far. We'll just give it a minute or two for everybody to be able to log in. Technical problems abound with these sorts of things. I think we'll get started at about 3 past on my watch, just to give everybody Anyone have a fun story or joke that they'd like to share in the chat? Start us off.
Thank goodness you didn't ask myself and Doro to.
Yeah, I was
something
of that. I'm not a good joke presenter.
Well, I know a lot, but I don't think that they should be told in a forum such as this.
I imagine.
You have to come find me at a conference after the day sessions are over if you want to hear some of those. All right, one more minute, we'll get started. Hello, hello, hello to all. Who has the best weather today? I think it might be me.
definitely not in London.
No, then
Southern Germany is not really
underwater.
No, well, actually, this is my hometown where we had the flood.
Right.
I'm from Reichert. I am living in Reichertshofen, but my house was fine. So yes, but it looks like rain today. So no need for that, but yes.
Yes. On a brighter note, we are at 12:03. Ooh, Karlsruhe, 22 degrees. We don't mind that.
Ooh, nice.
We're warm and sunny here, 25 degrees on the Mediterranean in Barcelona, and I think we're going to kick things off. So welcome one and welcome all to our session on navigating business travel compliance post-Brexit for the UK. Thanks for joining, taking time out of your day. We've got a poll to start us off. Please have a look on the side under polls and answer which type of business travel is most relevant to your organization. We have our assumptions, but we'd like to hear it directly from you. Lion's share. Oh, outbound travel also taking in hot pursuit. Come on, that's only 72% of the audience, gang. We want to see some participation here.
Maybe some people don't know, actually, and people are business traveling.
Well, while this flags up, I think it'd be prudent for us to do a quick round of introductions, just so that everybody knows who's speaking here. So I'll briefly introduce myself. I'm Brockdale. Please excuse the Canadian accent. Sometimes it does slip out from underneath me. Coming to you live from Barcelona. I'm with WorkFlex. I'm one of our senior global enterprise consultants. I've been in the business travel game for about 15 years, with a background in airlines, TMCs, and travel tech mostly. Doro?
Hello all, I'm Dorothy Schweigart. I am in Germany and I'm the director of the Compliance Research Center of WorkFlex. And yeah, very happy to be a part of this webinar today. Thank you for having me.
Mel?
Mel?
I'm Mel, Imelda, and I am based in the UK. I have been in global mobility for 22 years, so I am here today to, discuss this wonderful topic. And as Doro said, I'm happy to be here and hope I can be of assistance to anyone.
Fabulous. Well, it looks like the majority of people are most interested in both outbound and inbound travel to the UK, with a significant number also specifically interested in outbound travel from the UK to other countries. If you couldn't tell already, everybody, I'll be the panel moderator, and Doro and Mel will be our panelists and lead most of the discussions. So we wanted to use this to understand how we'll tailor our conversation to you all today. So 89% of audience has shown that both and outbound travel are the lion's share for us. Next question coming up. Have you encountered any compliance issues related to business travel within the last 12 months? Yes or no? Please see poll sidebar. Oh, interesting. We've got some yeses, we've got some nos. Oh, we've still got people answering the first question. Well, that was nice. It's nice and quick. We've got almost 90% participation here. That's great. Now, for those of you who have encountered compliance issues, which areas of compliance did this issue fall under? Visa, Social Security, permanent establishment, posted workers, or PWD, or other? We were only allowed to put in 5 answers, so hence the other. I expect somewhere around 50% of the gang to put some answers in here. So interestingly, Visa is showing the majority here with 9 answers and 60% of the compliance issues, followed by Social Security, PWD, and permanent establishment. Daro, Mel, I think that's pretty close to what we'd expected, I do think. So with the data showing as it shows, but the people on the call, I'd like to start off by asking, what has changed? What do these fine people need to know about compliance post-Brexit for the UK, and what can they do about it?
Which one of us should go first, Doro?
I guess.
Okay, so for Visa, I mean, I think everybody on the call is aware what we need. Visa means you have the entitlement to enter and maybe do business, do work in a certain country. So evidently before Brexit, this was especially for travels within Europe. This was irrelevant because within Europe, travel was always easily possible. Now, after the Brexit, this has changed as well for inbound going into the UK, but even more for outbound coming into Europe, because now citizenship makes it more difficult. So not every person working in the UK gets the UK regulation to go into Europe, but they might have special regulations because they are third country, so-called third country nationals, because they're living and working in the UK, but they might be like Brock from Canada, or they might be from South Africa, or they might be from India. And that goes back to their own citizenship. So this is the biggest issue that has changed. Right, Mel?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that, probably since Brexit, sort of doing a catch-all, we have had the other factors that, come into this around COVID, the need, the people wanting to do international remote work. We've got a geopolitical situation, and when you layer all that on top of Brexit, it's just one big jumble. And actually, really, from my perspective as a global mobility professional, you can't be expected to stay on top of everything all of the time, because there is so much changing. And, you've got your people operations teams, you've got your people experience teams, and they're all in the same position, actually, as, people like myself. We are not experts, but actually what we need to do, we need to be mindful of, is all these factors that keep laying on top mean that the landscape is changing constantly. And you've got a changing landscape, but you've also got, as you said, Doro, personal individuals who have a passport, who have different citizenship, who are traveling to different countries for different reasons. And then you put that person into that pot, you just don't know what's going to come out in terms of the visa that is needed to get to that country to just attend a meeting. And that's what we're talking about really in business travel. You're just really going to attend a meeting, or you're going to deliver a presentation, or, and it should seem something very simple, but it's now being layered with all of these different factors. So, I think you go from there, and not to jump too quickly, but then, we have the other factors of the social security, the posted workers, and then, then it becomes a bigger mountain to climb for people.
I'm pretty sure that the most had issues because, first of all, I think the biggest change is for people going into the UK, you have a visa waiver if they don't do business. So the first thing for inbound UK would be the question, what is the person doing there? Are they falling under the exempt business that they're doing, actions taking or not? And also the other way around. So for outbound UK, you have to see if they stay within Europe. They can go to any country, talking about UK nationals, they can go to any country and execute business, but you have to count the days. So they are now falling under the so-called Schengen rules, the Schengen visa. You don't have to apply this visa. It's like an automatic visa, but you have to count the days. So they only have 90 days that they can do and it's adding up. So it's 90 days in a 180-day period, but that's always moving. So if 90 days is 3 months. So if a person is going, let's say, a month for holiday to Spain, and then they have 3 bigger business trips, maybe a little bit more than a week to Germany, then they're already at 60 days.
Yeah.
So that means they have 4 more months where they can only come to the European countries for 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now the trains make it so easy to kind of like commute. But that would always be a day, they can't just hop on the train and go. So of course, there's not something you need to do right now for always talking UK citizens. There's not something you need to do right now, but you need to at least count the days, which you didn't have to do before, right, Mel?
Absolutely. And that is really, really critical in terms of counting the days. And even a year ago, when we knew that this was coming up, I know companies that were actually already getting themselves, and this is a really, really good tip I would suggest, is they were already getting themselves into that mode of educating their business about counting days. And, just coming up with a spreadsheet, something simple. We don't have to make it overcomplicated, but getting people diligently to start tracking their travel days. Because when this becomes, a critical business issue, let's face it, because you might need to go to a meeting, you might need to attend, you might need to go there, and your days are now suddenly limited because of previous travel, or as you said, Dora, this doesn't just take into account work, it's personal holiday time. You need to be ahead of the game. So having having diligence in getting yourself organized and getting your business organized, so just educating them a little bit around this topic in good practice of counting your days will actually help you in the long run, because you'll be able to plan better, you'll be able to see the days as they're coming, but equally you'll be able to look back, because there's always going to be that 180-day rolling period that's going to keep counting as the years go forward. And actually, we don't know what's going to happen with that. Are they going to start looking back and say, well, actually, over the last 3 years, you've had this many days, because when this becomes digitalized, as everything's getting, digitalized, it's going to be so easy to just pop them numbers from the border to the tax office. And then if you haven't kept a track, you're then at the mercy, really, let's face it, of the piece of paper, the digital automation that's gone from the border to the tax office. And now you have to prove otherwise. And, so I think it's really good practice to get yourself into that counting the days now. And it will help you plan. It will help you plan business.
And I think that comment is a perfect dovetail into my next point, but I do want to take a second just for housekeeping here. We would also like to open the floor on the chat to any questions that come up that anybody might like to raise. We'll be taking a look through the conversation to address those as and when. And for anyone that doesn't get answered in the session, we'll follow up with you offline, just to continue the ongoing discussion between everybody here. But back to your point now, with the Schengen rules applying for the outbound, with the STBV rules that apply with the PAYE exemptions and tracking for the UK inbound, and the point that you made about trains being ever so easy, not just from the sustainability push that we're all going for post-COVID, but also Brexit, a lot of the conversations that we're having find people saying, we've been doing this for years and we've never had a problem. We don't have any major landmark cases. There are certain companies, Bosch, for example, Netflix, for example, that have been highly, highly publicized cases of falling afoul of other countries' establishment rules. Specific to UK, like why should we care? Why can't we just keep doing things as we have been, and what might those ramifications be? I can certainly talk to a conversation I had last week where somebody was a UK national, take the train over for a few days in France, and the gendarme physically came to see them in the cohort that they were at, and because they were speaking English, they were asked the question, where are you from and why are you here? And were asked for an audit on site for their documentation. Thankfully, they were within the exceptions and everything was okay. However, if that wasn't the case, and you have this real situation, how do you manage that? What should we know as travelers? What do the companies need to know to avoid this?
And just to say, that's not the first time I've heard that in France, actually. So I think that what that tells you in general is that these offices are getting smarter, right? They know what's going on. So you feed that back into your question, which is, well, we've been doing this for, so long, nobody's ever been caught, we don't have any issues. Well, I think I would always say, why would you put yourself in that position? You're then on a back foot. You are then in the position where you have to prove, so you get an audit, because that's what will happen. The person will get stopped at the border. That is their first point of entry. If that's the first time they're going to meet a governing body of that country. If that meeting goes wrong and the wrong thing is said, or the truthful thing is said, but actually your employee wasn't educated that they are on business and they should have a business visa. Let's be honest here. The thing that will happen is that you'll end up with an audit, right? That there is no doubt about it. You will have an audit. So then you're thinking about, you haven't just implicated an employee and their personal situation with their visa and immigration, because you have, in some countries, you could end up with a black mark on your passport and not be allowed to re-enter for a period of time. Okay, that is a personal impact on a person person's status, because that then impacts their future travel in other countries. So you've impacted the person. You've then impacted the business. So you're dealing with not just your employee, you're now dealing with the business being audited. You're having to spend money on external lawyers, external tax advisors to help you go through this audit. Your team, your people operations team, your HR team, your global mobility team, if you have them, your in-house lawyers, they all still will need to invest time into this audit and this investigation. It takes so much from a company. So why wouldn't you start from a place of getting it right? Why would you put yourself into a position of, I would say, put yourself in a position of power? That's it.
I also would like to, well, from a entering the UK perspective. So I've heard now of so many that at the border at Heathrow, mainly Heathrow, they go through Heathrow, I guess, that you're really asked, what are you doing there? So if you don't prepare your business traveler to give the right answers, they might be denied to enter, because they say, yeah, you're probably providing services. You don't have a visa, you don't have a right to enter. And then once you're in that room which is not like behind the border, you're sent back with the next plane. And that is something that you always want to avoid. So it's very important that they either have like an invitation letter, confirmation letter. They have something to show, because when you're at that border, and I think everybody can relate who has been searched. Like, I had a time when every time it was my suitcase that got searched. And I was like, yeah, do I look like the standard drug dealer? I don't think so. And you always feel like, oh, this is really scary. So if they really ask you and say, no, you can't enter, you have a business behind that. This is even for management people, very senior, with very high seniority, it's a strange feeling. So you don't want that as HR, as travel management, as whomever is possible to get rid of this discussion. And also for UK outbounds going to, I don't know, Greece, Cyprus, if they're not UK nationals, you have to check a visa. I mean, everybody who's going to Japan, who's going to the US, you always check visa. Okay, yeah. After Brexit, you have to do the same, because it's not covered under a European regulation anymore. And that is very, very important, that you just are so aware of that.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, Dora, you're right. It's just being aware, because none of us are immigration experts. None of us are border experts. None of us, we don't claim to be, but you need to be aware. And as long as you're aware, you can go and you can find the information. There are, there's lots of places you can get the information, but you just need to be aware, and you need to make your business aware, and you need to make your people aware.
So based on the sort of the split question I had earlier about the lack of stories, lack of examples specific to businesses that are operating a lot in the UK. I'm married to a Brit. I've spent some time living there, and I've spent many years working with the culture for business, and know that there's a lot of social proof that is required in order to make a systemic change when changing SOPs and things to modernity. What can you say, comment? What are your thoughts on the state of things insofar as the UK not really having these examples? Like, do we have to wait for a specific concrete thing for a sea change, or what should we be thinking about, and how do you make people feel comfortable and confident that making this change proactively is the right thing to do?
I would say that everybody will know a story in the UK. Okay, I think British are very good at, and actually it's part of the system, right? You have to prove that your intention was not to evade the border or evade the law. Okay, so until that has been put through an audit or a court system, or whatever the process is, it's very much kept under the radar, very Britishly, right? It's almost swept under the carpet. And then when it's dealt with and it's proved, and you could be, it could be that they could prove that you were wrong, or you could prove that you weren't, you didn't have any bad intentions. You might pay a fine or whatever. Again, if it's not something that is going to be in the interest of the UK economy, like the business in the UK, it's not going to get plastered all over the newspapers, because it will just very Britishly get shoved under the carpet and we just won't talk about it. But everybody knows in the industry of a story that has happened. So it's not that it's not happening. It is happening. I think people are just, exactly. So I think it's difficult to answer that question, because it's not out there, but it is happening and people do know about it. And hence that's why we have these discussions, because, and we have, people here wanting to hear about this, is because actually people do want to get compliant. They do want to make sure that they are not the ones that are caught, that their employees are not the ones that are caught, that they're not having to answer to their C-suite if it does go wrong, because the problem will land on your desk. So I find that a difficult one to answer just from a very British perspective. I don't know if you've got a different viewpoint on that, Doro. I mean, that's the example that I could,
Actually, now the Germans have a different approach. I mean, looking at it from a very German perspective, I say, okay, yeah, there was a huge change with Brexit. So the German approach would be, let's soak in all the new prerequisites and the rules and try to be as compliant as possible. We would still not talk about being non-compliant there, but that's the approach. So I think the problem is that everybody needs to understand this, unfortunately, is not only a business travel, especially visa and the Schengen visa. It's also having an impact on the private life of your employee. And I'm pretty sure if an employee gets picked up, let's say in Greece, because they wanted to go there for a holiday and they did not have enough days left over for a holiday, that will be a massive impact. Like if you have fines imposed on the company. So I think the awareness, it's not just a legal rule that you have to follow and you can somehow, go your way around it. They might just be sent home from a holiday because they are overusing their days. And that is a not nice result, because it's a private life result and you challenge the private life of your employees by ignoring 90 days rules and whatever. So yeah, so that would be my approach and my take, that I say, okay, as soon as you are invading somebody's private life, you have to comply with the rules, because that's not nice. So, but I see we have a question that I would like to answer. So this is a question about how you can get into the UK. There's clearly found on the internet, on the German or on the embassy's pages, what can be done without a visa. So what is covered under the visa waiver for the UK? It's mainly, actually, it's kind of like the same with the posted worker, which are we talking? So if you look at your travel, if somebody provides a service, if somebody does something where you will really send an invoice, it's not all connected to the invoice, but if it's like a paid service, you probably need a visa. It's the same in the US, it's the same in Japan. So it's the UK is following these rules. So there are a lot of like pre-activities, supporting activities, connecting activities, networking activities that you can do like a tourist. And also here for the inbound UK audience, don't tell somebody who's doing a service to say, I'm here for tourism or just for meetings. If somebody is providing a service, they're not doing meetings. So it's not a smart idea to lie to the authorities, if I may say that blank as it is, like the Germans.
You should.
Very German.
Very German. I know. Don't lie to the authorities. And very compliant. So yeah.
Culturally so. And I think branching up from Alina's question, thank you for that, is it's difficult to understand how to take all of this information and work on it. In all the conversations I'm having with teams in HR, people ops, global mobility, risk and compliance, benefits and payroll, a lot of the time they're quite overwhelmed and strapped for time in thinking that they can add another project to their plate to be proactive in trying to ameliorate the position that they may or may not realize that they're already in based on what they're already doing. So, you've just given a good example to Alina of how to look for that specific solution. But when it comes to managing all of this, managing days, managing the tracking, looking at what you can and can't be doing, what tools or new ways of working might there be available to the market to help, bring companies forward like this?
I would say that before your tools is having open discussion around the table with the teams that are involved. So, if you've got global mobility, it's them. If not, you've got your people operations team or anybody in the people team. You might have a travel vendor, they need to be sat at the table. You may need to bring corporate tax in because you need to decide, well, actually, what roles will create a permanent establishment. So, actually, the key thing of bringing the what I call the stakeholders, the compliance gatekeepers to the table, and all working together to find a harmonious way of working, because that's what it is. We need to create the policies, we need to create the infrastructure, we need to create the education. Let's make sure we're all doing it together, because it's all for the best intentions of the company and also our employees. So once you've created that sort of working relationship, it's very easy to then start moving into, right, okay, so who's out there? Because actually, we all realize we have a part to play in this. We either need to hire somebody to oversee it, or we need to hire a couple of people to oversee it, let's face it, or we need to find other external tools or solutions to help us, navigate it. And they're out there, right? They're out there for your choosing. You then need to start going out and looking at, you've got your team of people, you know what your policy is, you know what your process is. Now we need to find a tool to help us manage it, or we need to find, a solution to help us manage it. So I think the first step is getting the key people around the table and all agreeing that we need to get this right for the company. And then you start your steps of going out there and getting the help. Because, again, I think I've already said it. I don't know if there's anybody on this call, and I'm certainly going to put my hand up and say it, I'm not an immigration expert. I don't know all the immigration in all of the countries, but I do know enough about, what we need to do, being in mobility for, over 20 years. I'm also not a tax expert. I don't claim to be. But what I do know is that, this role has to keep the company compliant. And I know that business travel is something that I need to get people discussing. So you need external help. That's the bottom line. You can't do this yourself. And actually, nobody should be expected to do it by themselves. So you create an in-house team, and then you bring your external providers in to actually deliver or do the operational administration, because that's the complex piece.
I think I want to put a pause there before we get Doro's opinion on that, which working for the same organization. I think we can move that a little further down the call. And I do see that Loic has a question here, but I want to dig in a little bit there, Mel, to the point of bringing those various stakeholders to the same table. So I spent a very long time in business travel, pure business travel, and have seen a massive shift post-COVID, where business travel and procurement used to be the kings of the castle when running the business travel program. This was the most important thing. You know, it's a well understood statistic that business travel is typically the second largest line item spend next to salary for any large organization. With everything that's happened, with the change in employee expectations and flexible working, with everything that's happening sociopolitically, geopolitically, with taxation and government borders, what do we need to understand about breaking down the silos or the barriers to entry to be able to get these various stakeholders to the same sort of fundamental foundation where we can have a successful project that builds up, when, you know, we all know very well that business travel managers are hyper protective of their programs, as they should be, because they're lengthy ordeals that involve multiple stakeholders and service contracts, tons and tons of training, tooling, verifications, and implementations. The last thing they want to do is bring in another friction point. So I want to talk first about, you know, how do we manage that conversation, and what do we need to know before knocking on people's doors? And secondly, then I'd like to open it up to Doro to talk about some of the ways forward with some of the tools, platforms, and providers in the industry that can help manage that. And then would like to get to the question that's in the chat.
That's a good question. So I would say that I have seen a lot of global mobility teams post-Brexit trying to bring the administration for business travel compliance into their team, because there is a real need to make sure that, you know, your business travelers are compliant. And it's, you know, and I also talk about frequent business travelers. And then if you go over the 90 days, you're suddenly, are you actually a business traveler anymore? And now you should be moving into a commuter assignment, which then is a whole different thing. So it's really, really key for, and I've seen it, you know, to get that data. How I've seen it done is that, you know, that the travel provider will download a report at the end of every month and send it over. And then the global mobility team will, you know, would go through it. That's too late. You know, you can't do that. Now you can't do that. What when we think about, actually, you know, and I know that most of the attendees here were talking about going into the UK, but if we just think for a minute about going out of the UK into Europe, you know, it's too late once the person has already gone and come back, maybe, to apply for the A1 or to do the posted worker directive, because a lot of them processes now are they're happening at the same time. So when you apply for the visa, it's in line with getting the A1, or when you're applying for the visa, when you apply for the A1, it's in line with the posted worker directive. So actually, that for me is the trigger point of getting the two people into the room at the same time. We're happy to do this. We're happy to take this on. We want to do this, but we need to work together to have it done at the point of travel, or at the point of booking travel. Because actually, guess what? It's too late once the person's already gone. You've already crossed the line of non-compliance. So I would say that you need to open the discussion around, we're here to help. We're here to all work together. We're here to make sure the employee is, you know, compliant and safe when they're on their travels. And we're also here to make sure the company is compliant when we're sending people on travel. So let's work together and let's see how we can make this, you know, a joint venture. We're not, you know, as you said, you don't want to feel like you're taking work away, but equally you also, you know, don't want to feel like you're the one who's taking the bottom end of the pile of ticking all the boxes. Let's do this together. This is a joint venture. We're all here to keep the company compliant. But, you know, that's our responsibility. I hope that kind of conversation goes well, across the table between, people team and the travel team or the global mobility team. And it should do, you just have to build the relationship and all work for the greater good.
I think that's great. Dora, would love to get your insight on that, especially as you've worked on countless implementations of companies that are, large global organizations with entities in DACH, with entities in UKI, with entities further afield. How did those conversations go that you're privy to? What changed, what worked, what didn't, and how do you take that even further?
I would really like to pick up what we had in the poll, because I think that makes it easier if we look at the really details. So I think we've been talking about visa and the problems to determine visa, Schengen visa waiver. So there's a really good question. Actually, the EU does not need anything for short-term business visitors that come on the Schengen visa to document. So it's the Schengen visa is like, you get the first stamp in, and then you have 90 days. And if you go over, you're just illegal. So it's not like, I've been asked what happens when you're sent back. And you cannot enter anymore. So I know the train makes it possible. You can go in, but if you're caught, you're sent back. So right now, we don't have anything else like the STBV. Exactly. And just short to Elena, that's why I actually didn't want to say anything about the invoice. It doesn't matter. It can even be pro bono work. But if it's a work that would usually be paid through an invoice, you need a visa. So you can't get rid of the visa obligation just by saying, we have the mother companies sitting in Finland and Sweden pay for this, and I go there and they say, I'm just doing business trips. So this is just a helping in the mind. If you do, if you would usually for this service pay a price, it's a service, and then a visa needs to be obtained, a business visa. So, but it's not only getting in and maybe being entitled to work, it's also the questions that I would like to really scoot in a little bit, also looking at the time. Social Security. Actually, Brexit did not change that much, because the UK is still using the European legislation. So it's still the A1 to prove that UK travelers going into Europe are covered by the UK system, and you need the A1 for that. Actually, a lot of authorities want to see that. Why do they want to see that? Because it means you're covered also in case something happens, somebody has to go to the doctor. So no, don't get the A1 retroactively and try to, have them travel, because if something happens big time, or if you have a real long time, like accident insurance case, you will have a big, blah, blah with the insurances. Just do it. The process is pretty straightforward. So that's just same for posted worker directive notification, PWD. This used to be always to be done in Belgium. They have a nice portal called Limosa. It used to be always to be done in France. They have a nice portal called Sipsi. And nobody else had a nice portal with a nice name, so nobody else wanted it. Right within the COVID situation, somehow the countries had time, and the EU said, now finally get it done. So we have a lot of portals where you have to register people doing business. Do we always have to register? No, it's kind of like the same questions, similar questions like for visas. As a basic note, a posted worker is somebody who goes somewhere and does a service. The standard idea would be somebody who builds a house. So you you send a team from a construction company to Germany to build a house. They are providing services. But it's not only construction workers. So every country has given itself its own rules. You have to look into the special country rules and decide on, do we have to register, yes or no? Okay, so now, and I think the last one, we had some people with PE issues. I hope everybody knows what a PE is, a permanent establishment. That means that somehow local authorities deem you as a taxable institution, a taxable daughter of your company through the business execution that your person has done there. It happens. The more visible you are, the more often it happens. Actually, the countries have now realized, with everybody being so active and it's so easy to travel and it's so easy to work remote, that they start looking into like shared workspaces. They look into gatherings and all that. So again, here it's possible, if you have thought of everything, have the right documentation. Did I say documentation? So, and that kind of brings us to, okay, who can help? First of all, I've been asked in my last German webinar, can anyone do this in-house? And I said, well, yes, if you have manpower, of course, because you can have Excel lists, you can use your HR system to track everything. You can have a direct line to your visa immigration specialist. You can have, if you like to do A1s yourself, and if it's not Europe, but we're mainly talking about Brexit, but if it's not Europe, you can do certificates of courage yourself. PWD notifications, yeah, they're just a little pain. So if you want to register in all those nice portals, you can do that yourself. Determine yourself what to fill in and follow this up. You can gather all this and make a nice email to your traveler so he has everything with himself if he gets in an audit. Of course, you need to document for taxes, so you give it to maybe transfer pricing and corporate tax to determine the PE risk. For wage tax, yeah, you might want to do maybe a short check with Big Four or with runner-ups. I mean, it doesn't have to be a Big Four, but yeah, they are the big ones knowing it. And data protection, you probably have somebody in house who can tell you exactly what data protection rules to do and what to do on this trip and that trip. And then you're covered. You can do it yourself, of course, if you have the manpower, or you hire someone. So I already mentioned, I mean, that's where I was born and raised. You can go to a Big Four, pay a small fortune, and get the information. I know there's some on the call. I greet you all. I still love you. So, or you get something a little bit more modern, digital, because you still need the documentation, even if they help you, even if somebody else helps you, documentation. So if you look for someone, you need definitely someone where you have a dashboard and you see all the trips. You need someone who calculates all those weird times. You need someone who looks at the trip and assesses what is necessary. Where is my risks? What do I have to do? And in the best case, you have someone who does it for you. Like, yeah. Now I could pass back to you, Brock.
This is not a sales call. This is an education webinar. We do have a company called WorkFlex, and we will be exhibiting at the Business Travel Show, June 19th and 20th, and would invite you to come and learn about our offering. But it's exactly that. It depends on the need of the company. And there are providers that provide the more traditional service, and there are providers that have come out and are providing a more modern, digitally integrated, more automated service as well. We are certainly further towards the latter. but I will not bore you with a sales presentation here at all. But I think the most interesting sort of undercurrent through all of the conversation here that has gone sort of thought of but not said is that despite the fact that there's not been a particular thing to a big event, what do they call it, a great white whale or a black swan, that's the one. It sounds like it really is a moment for a significant cultural change on the way that we're managing business compliance. And I mean that in general for organizations, not just business travel, but also holistic sort of people movement. And like if I've learned anything here, and hope that the large takeaway is that these conversations need to be a lot more open, a lot more frequent, and a lot more frank. And I like to call back to an interesting conversation I had with a business in the UK a couple of weeks ago, where they knew they had a problem. They knew that they had an internal function doing a lot of what you were talking about, Doro. They have their travel management provider, they have their HR provider, they have their policies. But the poor person was trying to fix the fact that nobody wanted to report where they were traveling to. And so she came looking for a solution that would help her track the people who didn't want to provide the information. And that is purely, shy of giving everybody an air tag and saying, swallow this. And without breaking fundamental human rights between, business and personal barriers, it is very much a cultural thing that needs to be addressed. And there are myriad things that we can talk about, not certainly least the general election upcoming in the UK, that are just going to ever evolve things to be more and more interesting. So certainly my key takeaway, and I'd like to pass it to both of you for your closing notes as well, but my whole thing here is have these conversations, have them early, have them with as many people as you can. Have them with your HR, have them with your comp and bans, have them with payroll, have them with finance, have them with travel. Coming from travel, I know that it's a difficult conversation to bring up, but it is so very important, because we don't want a black swan event where some company gets major publicity for a fine or a ban or something like that. We want to avoid that. So my piece here is it's cultural and it's got to change. And only the people on the call or the people that feel behooved to move forward and pick that up can be the ones that can drive that change. Would also like to encourage anybody to pop in any questions in the last 8 minutes that we have, but would like to turn it over to Mel and Doro for your closing thoughts and your takeaways as well.
I'll say that the borders are, and Doro mentioned this, the borders are getting more digitalized. The UK have said that they want to be fully digitalized by the end of 2025. We already have the digitalization in the Schengen in some of the countries, and that will just keep happening actually it might even be in all member states, but the digitalization is coming. Once that is fully digitalized, there is nothing to hide behind. Like, you have already, if you haven't become digitalized in your own business travel compliance, you are going to be behind. So with that digitalization will come sharing of data, and again, between the border office and the tax offices, the social security offices, etc., you will be behind. So I would say that based on that, my takeaways would be that you start preparing now. If you haven't, you should really be, but okay, let's be honest. Let's prepare now. Let's get yourself together, get your teams together, prepare. Summarizing basically what you said, Brock, prepare. Educate yourself and the business. So you don't have to be all-encompassing, knowing all of the visa regulations and all of the posted worker and the A1s in all of the countries. No one does. Don't put it upon yourself, but at least educate yourself of the different compliance areas and understand some of the risks, and talk to us. We can I could talk about it forever. And then educate your business. Be honest with them. When you're educating your business, educate your people, right? And then the final one I would say is, if you're not doing it already, get yourself into good practice of tracking and get your people tracking, because again, if you're going to be behind the curve if you know, once it's all gone fully digital, and actually you should be doing this anyway. So prepare, educate, track.
Definitely. Like I said, documentation, because then you can also jump in. What I would also like, it's also in, even in you know, in the bigger travel and very compliant German systems. It's a change, because business travel just used to happen. And now somebody needs to own the business travel, and not only cost-wise, not only, how do I book my hotel? So, and this is the best in the HR or in the well, close connected to the travel management, because somebody needs to own it. So that is something, especially with a completely new, mainly new regulations due to a major legal change like Brexit was, that outbound, so companies sending into the UK or UK companies sending out, that they say, okay, somebody needs to be in charge. And then I think it's doable, it's handleable. It's of course, business travel like global mobility, you can say, yeah, then we just don't do the secondment, but you can't just not do a business travel. So yeah, do it, document it, and then normally it should be doable, because everybody is doing it as well. So it's just rules to follow. It's not magic.
Yeah, I think that's great. You know, stay educated or get educated. And I think there's a couple of really interesting resources out there. Not enough people talk about the ISO 31030 best practices out there specifically for travel risk. That's both physical security and all of the rest of the stuff that we've talked about today. Some interesting initiatives like the Travel Risk Academy in the UK, who are trying to prop up the education of that for the industry. I'd highly recommend you check them out, see what they're doing, attend the conferences, have the conversations, and build that open communication. Somebody has to start it, but don't feel like you have to be the only person that manages everything yourself, because you will burn out quickly if you try to take the whole thing upon yourself. So have those education sessions, have those open conversations with everybody across the board in the organization, and figure out the best way for your organization to be able to tackle these, whether that's using anyone on the continuum of the providers that we've talked about on the call today. And best of all, stay safe and make sure you're taking care of your people and your tax dollars, pounds. Any final thoughts, Mel or Doro?
No, prepare, educate.
Fantastic.
Pet.
We like that.
Pet your people.
Pet shop, boys and girls. They were here in Barcelona a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you for the insightful questions. The recording will be shared to all who have registered. And as I said before, we're exhibiting at the Business Travel Show and the Travel Tech Show in London on June 19th, 20th at the Excel. If anybody would like to have a further chat, I'll be there with a couple of our colleagues. Unfortunately, Doro can't make it, but would love to have a chat face-to-face and just continue this the discussion even further. Wish you all a wonderful day, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.